Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Ghostbusters.
Yes, these are professional musicians.
Hey,
That's exactly what our band sounds like normally, too.
pretty much. It sounds like I'm wheezing through some falsetto for most of our songs. Anyway, Ghostbusters coming out this week. I'm excited about it.
I'm excited about it, too.
It's all I can think about.
I would have preferred a sequel, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I didn't
me
really
too.
understand the whole reboot thing, but we'll
neither.
see. I mean, there's a lot that's happened in the paranormal world, you know, since the Ghostbusters came out in 1984, 32 years ago now. So, you know, maybe they're going to address all those, you know, changes, like the advent of, you know, this extreme popularity of
Of the ghost
paranormal
hunting
investigation in pop culture.
I read an interview with Paul Feig, the director, who also directed Bridesmaids and Spy, and he was the one who created Freaks and Geeks, which I think is his finest creation, because I really enjoyed Freaks and Geeks when it was out. But he said that the reason they did a reboot was that he thought it wasn't interesting to start, you know, if they had the Ghostbusters going for the past 30 years, he thought he could make the reboot more interesting as an origin story than a continuation of the story.
Okay. Well, wait. Sorry. Can we just rewind for a second?
Yeah.
We just dove right into this.
Sorry,
So-
we started singing the theme.
I know. And we're all really excited about the Ghostbusters thing. But first
It's
of
all
all,
my sister can think about.
we should properly introduce that we have the lovely Allison Jorlin with us today.
Yay!
Once again, always happy to have you on the show with us, Allison.
Oh, thank you. Woohoo!
From Milwaukee Ghosts.
Yes, sorry, from Milwaukee Ghosts. And last time we talked was after we all attended the Haunted America convention together.
Yay, that
which
was
very fun.
Oh, yeah. That feels like a long time ago, but it was just a few
Doesn't it?
weeks.
It was
yeah.
It was 2 weeks ago.
Yes, and we were in the very comfortable Comfort Inn recording the last podcast in Alton, Illinois. But now we're back to Wisconsin. And thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
I'm Wendy, and we have Mike as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike from Sunspot, and Wendy and I play in a band together. And if you haven't heard it yet, sunspotuniverse.com is where you can get our songs. And we're going to have a song for you at the end of this episode.
That's right, as with every episode. So, okay, now I feel a little bit better. We're kind of up to speed.
All right,
do you guys
now
have a
let's
good
get back
week?
to talking ghosts
Oh, okay.
and Ghostbusters.
No small talk. Let's just get to the ghosts.
Straight to the bustin' ghost this week.
Okay,
I
that's
did have a good week. I have been reading about the new Ghostbusters constantly, though, and that's what I was saying. Like the interview with Paul Feig when he said that he thought he could make a more interesting origin story than a sequel, but I also think that he was scared of making a sequel. Because if you make a reboot, the original's always there. You don't tarnish the reputation.
That's true.
And you can always be like, well, the reboot, like, that doesn't even exist. That was just made for, you know, it's like the American Red Dwarf. Like, who cares? You know,
Like if it really tanks, though, too, you can just be kind of like, okay, we'll just ignore that one.
so I was disappointed in that. And other people are disappointed because they think that it's a gimmick, that it's all women this time instead of all men.
Yeah, there's controversy around that. My goodness.
And
Ooh.
right, so that's hot on the internet.
Yeah,
right now.
that part's made me upset because, you know, historically, women have been involved in historical research, maybe more than men, and
Absolutely.
we can
The
get into that
spiritualists.
as we go into, you know, the real life influences of
Yeah.
the original Ghostbusters.
I mean, I think some of it might just be because the characters we are all so familiar with those four guys, and they each played their part so well, you know, and so it's just hard to imagine, I guess, anyone else, maybe female or male.
No, I think it's like people think it's a gimmick. You know, like, oh, all
Yeah,
chick Ghostbusters
yeah.
this time. And I think, I don't know. I mean, you take the same thing. You take four people who really cut their chops on, I mean, Saturday Night Live, And I guess Ernie Hudson was never on Saturday Night Live, and Harold Ramis did SCTV stuff more than he did Saturday Night Live. But you take 4 actors who are kind of in that world and put them together in New York, fighting ghosts.
Busting ghosts.
Busting makes me feel good. And you put them together. So I think I can see why they did that. And also Paul Feig, he's very, and I don't even know if I'm saying his name correct.
Yeah, isn't that Feig? I'm not sure.
Feig. I was just going by the regular English rules. But maybe Paul Feig.
Names don't follow the rules.
That's okay. We did an entire podcast where I said David.
Oh, that's right.
I said David Icky instead of David Icke.
Oh. Well, that's kind of a joke, saying David Icky.
Right. So either way, the director of the
Poor David Icke. I'm sorry, Mr. Icke.
He did Jim Harold last week, so I know we can get him.
Cool.
So we'll have David Icke on sometime, and I'll apologize in person.
Personally.
And say, I'm sorry I called you Icky.
It's like you're in kindergarten again.
But the director of Ghostbusters, the director of the new Ghostbusters, I think he just wants a chance to let his property live and die on its own. And you're taking the same premise, and he's worked with these women before, not Leslie Jones, but he's certainly worked with Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig. And then he just brings on the people that they're comfortable with. So I don't think it's a big deal. I think the role reversal is fine. I would have preferred to see Peter Venkman as a 65-year-old man.
That would be pretty cool.
Is he still hitting on girls? Is he still doing that leg thing when he goes by the fountain? Remember that leg kick?
Yeah, well, I think we might see some of the principles in it.
Oh, let's hope so.
I
They better be in there. They have to.
Yeah, I mean, if
Bill Murray,
anything,
Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson are
the
all in.
Ghostbusters franchise is big on homages to the past.
That's true.
Well, at the same time, though, Ghostbusters, more than any other comedy I think made, has a very rich universe that goes along with it.
Right, and I think that part of the resistance is maybe a reaction to that, because I think the original Ghostbusters came from a very authentic place that we can explore in this episode. And I think, part of the fear of the new one is it's going to take that strong foundation away and replace it with something that's, too schlocky and artificial and gimmicky. And so maybe it's maybe it's not as much misogyny as women couldn't be Ghostbusters, but it's more of that like, don't take this pivotal first example in a genre, this whole idea
Supernatural
of
comedy,
supernatural effects driven comedy. Don't take that and destroy it with something that doesn't feel real. And,
I agree with you, Allison.
But you said, we're going to talk about the original in just a second, but you said, Mike, that maybe it does come from a place of authenticity off air when we were talking about Melissa McCarthy, because she has her own, and she's going to be a principal character in the new movie, and I
think she's the Ray character. I think Melissa McCarthy is Ray.
Oh.
Yeah, I think she might be. And it's interesting. I've been reading about the original Ghostbusters, and they had this idea that, the three of them had very important parts. Like Peter Venkman was the voice of the Ghostbusters, Ray was the heart, and Egon was the brain.
So Peter Venkman was Bill Murray.
Right.
Ray Stantz was Dan Aykroyd.
Right.
Egon Spengler was Harold Ramis. Moment of silence for Harold. Love you, Harold.
And then Winston Sedmore came on, Ernie Hudson, as an everyman character. So we could see that every person could be a Ghostbuster. And also...
What does he say? If it comes with a steady paycheck, I'll believe whatever you say.
Right. And he was also a character where, you would have a natural reason for exposition, to explain things. So that's what he became. But, so maybe, Melissa McCarthy, she's going to be the new heart of the Ghostbusters. So we'll see. But you said that you had seen some press about her having real life ghost experiences. Is that right, Mike?
The actual headline was Melissa McCarthy legit believes in ghosts.
Oh, wow. That's a fact?
Yeah, MarieClaire.com. And this is a couple months ago, actually.
Wait, they use the word legit in a title of an article?
This is the internet.
They can do whatever they want now.
Right. So, yeah, but they use the word legit.
The elements of Scott style are gone.
This makes me so sad.
Strunk and White are crying in their beer. Didn't I get you a copy of Strunk and White's Elements of Style one year for your birthday, Allison?
I think
I feel like I should remember that, but if you did,
wow.
that is just sweet.
Because you said you were going to write a book, and I was like, this is the most useful thing you can use for your book. Anyway.
Oh, that is just sweet.
That's thoughtful.
But Melissa McCarthy said she grew up on a farm, and on a farm, she would talk to people in the farmhouses. And she said, I don't know if they were the neighbors or who they were, but I was talking to people in the farmhouses.
Was she in a barn? Did she have barns, or what did she have there?
Well, let me go back and I can give you the original quote.
Yeah.
That she said. She's like, I grew up on a farm and I didn't have any real friends. I have a very strong belief that people are out there because I was certainly talking to someone in those barns. Otherwise, I'm just crazy. I really strongly believe in ghosts.
That's great. I like to hear more.
Well, that's the rest of it. She's just talking about she's excited about being in the Ghostbusters. She loves an underdog story, loves it when people become heroes. And that's it. That's
what of the ghosts?
That's the extent.
What of the
extent of her ghost experience? Right, Marie Claire wasn't going to get into an in-depth paranormal investigation on
no.
McCarthy.
Marie Claire is in a scientific journal.
No, it's not. Even though with like diet tips, they'll make you think they're a scientific journal. Marie Claire is not a scientific journal.
Well, just on the topic of celebrities and believing in ghosts, I thought it was interesting, and this is not related to the Ghostbusters movie, but it is related to ghosts.
Okay.
I was listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast recently, and I believe it was Malcolm Gladwell that he was interviewing.
Yeah.
And he said he believes in ghosts.
Holy crap! No.
Is that the tipping point guy?
Oh yeah, that's the New Yorker's all-star. That's everybody's favorite article author with the crazy hair, Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, he said that he had family, I think in where was it, like Jamaica or something, and he's like, yeah, everybody believes in ghosts. And he's like, stayed at my aunt's house, and there was a ghost in the room, and it's no big deal. Like, saw it in the middle of the night.
Oh, I haven't listened to that podcast.
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Wow, send the link to me. I want to listen to that.
But I'm a Malcolm Gladwell super fan. I've read.
Oh,
I've purchased all of his books.
I thought the interview was excellent, so I'm giving Tim Ferriss a free plug here.
Yeah, his podcast is often good, especially when he has excellent storytellers like Malcolm Gladwell on it.
Right. It was the June 21st episode.
Okay.
But we'll put the link in the show notes at othersidepodcast.com/100.
Oh, happy 100, guys.
So what led us to doing, or for me to be interested in paranormal stuff? I always thought it was fun. But when I saw Ghostbusters, and Allison, were you with us when me, Mom, and Dad, when we saw it?
Oh, yeah.
With your
that
friend?
was 84, so...
Yeah, but 84, you'd have been old enough to be in high school, and like, I don't want to see movies with my
family.
Oh,
my
no, I
brother.
still went to go see movies with you guys. It wasn't that snobby.
Because we went from Grandma and Grandpa's, we were Grandma and Grandpa's, then we went to go see Ghostbusters. And I was like, holy cow. Like, that was my favorite. It still is my favorite film. Like, when
you were like, what? I was like, what do you want to do, Mike, when you grow up? I want to be a Ghostbuster.
Like, I literally said that.
I like how his voice. I like your impression of his voice too.
And the thing is, when I listen to my voice recorded, I realize I do sound like that still.
Yes.
Want to be a Ghostbuster?
It was career day, senior year of high school. I wore a lab coat with a Peter Venkman action figure in my pocket.
That's awesome.
To be a parapsychologist. So that was for career day. I was like, I'm gonna be a Ghostbuster. I'm gonna be a parapsychologist.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that. Still in high school, you were when you finally got to high school, you were really still into that.
Absolutely.
Boy, I wish I would have known that.
In 5th grade, I did a Zehner deck experiment when we had to do some kind of experiment we were learning in science class. I did a Zehner deck thing, and Ben was with me.
He was the subject.
Yeah, Ben was with me on the Xander deck, and from our band,
awesome.
everybody. And you know what's funny is that I did that Xander deck experiment, and Ben and I got 22 out of the 25 cards correct.
Holy cow, you guys are in
Whoa.
sync.
And
Psychic.
when we were in college, I also did a remote viewing experiment.
I remember that. I think I participated.
I believe you did participate in that, Wendy. But Ben and I did it together, and we got 100% correct on the remote
Oh,
viewing experiment.
man.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea you were such a sci geek. That is
They're
incredible.
Not only bandmates, they are psychic mates.
Like linked, right? That was
amazing.
weird.
But, we did find evidence of the fact that you really have the credentials to be a Ghostbuster, Mike.
Oh,
you know what I'm
yeah.
speaking of?
Yes, I do. Okay, does everyone remember book fairs when book fairs would come into grade school?
Well,
Yes, they're so
I'm a teacher,
fun.
and they still happen.
They
do?
Okay.
Yes, we still have book fairs.
Doesn't everybody just
Oh,
get their stuff
yay.
on a Kindle now? That's
Nope.
That's what I
Even
do.
though Egon Spengler was quoted as saying print is dead, it's still very much alive in the elementary schools anyway.
That's great. I'm glad.
But can you get Tobin's Spirit Guide on the Kindle is what I want.
No, but we can talk about that because, all those occult texts that they had in Ghostbusters, have real life corollaries. Or,
Analogs.
analogs.
Okay, so what Allison is talking about then is that there was a little picture book that said how to be a Ghostbuster. It was like Ghostbusters training. And so I got it at the book fair, and then I went through it, and Mom brought this when we were all hanging out not too long ago, and it was an official certificate of that you're an official Ghostbuster, and I printed my name, and I think maybe I didn't do it good enough the first time, so I had to scratch it out and print it again.
Oh,
to make sure.
it's very official.
It's very suitable for framing, and we have a picture of it. We'll put a link in the show notes of my status as an official Ghostbuster. from
Yes.
that picture
So
book.
so no one
That's
should ever
amazing.
question you again in your paranormal acumen. So, speaking of like all this, family interest in our family in Ghostbusters, the story of Ghostbusters itself came from Dan Aykroyd, who has his own, paranormal heritage. Not only his own knowledge of psychical research, but also a real history going back throughout a few generations of his family. He calls it's his family business.
I did reach out to Dan Aykroyd's publicist
Oh, you did?
for this episode.
And
Yeah.
he didn't get back to you?
No, strange thing, he didn't get back to me.
Oh, man.
Imagine
But
that.
no, that's the dream interview. We'll have Dan Aykroyd on some. If there's one person I want to interview,
Oh gosh, that would be
It's-
so good.
it's Dan Aykroyd, because number one, everybody loves Dan Aykroyd. Even that Nothing But Trouble movie. Oh, let's not talk about it. But I love Dan Aykroyd, and I even used to watch the what was this? The Chronicles of the Paranormal, that Canadian
Yeah,
show.
well,
that
we'll
he did.
talk about that because that has to do with his family history as well. It was Sci Factor Chronicles of the Paranormal,
Sci Factor.
1996 to 2000.
Yeah, I used to watch that in the dorms. Okay, Allison, let's start with Dan Aykroyd. What's his family history? I know
Yeah.
that his father's into this stuff. But
Right,
isn't his-
but it even goes beyond that. So he's got this whole family history of spiritualism, which he's referred to as his family business. And that's very much where the story of Ghostbusters grew out of. So let's first explain what spiritualism is. Spiritualism is a religion that started around 1847 in New York. And the principal belief in spiritualism is that the spirits of the dead surround us and are available for us to contact. And we should be contacting them because they're our loved ones and they want to help us.
Wendy and I did a lot of spiritualism. We talked about Houdini and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And also our episode with Brian J. Showers talking about Victorian
right.
horror. We go into spiritualism too. So we will put the show notes in there. So if you guys need a brief reminder of what spiritualism is, we got you covered.
Yeah, and so that's where the seance ceremony came from, is this religion of spiritualism, which still has its adherents today.
In Wisconsin, there's a spiritualist camp.
Yes, we'll talk about that in a minute too. So Dan's great-grandparents were really into spiritualism, so much so that they had a home circle. So a home circle is what you would call your seance group.
So they basically were like teenage girls and had a Ouija board party every Friday night.
No, not at all. Not a Ouija board at all. But instead, they had a medium. And they conducted, I think it was weekly seances at their home, an old farmhouse in Canada, for 12 years. Now,
wow, that's serious.
That's not the most significant part.
Wait, but the medium was a live-in medium?
Yes. So their medium,
going on there.
Walter Ashurst, I think was his name, he lived with them for 12 years in their home. So that's how serious they were.
That's really serious. That's like an alternative lifestyle series.
Yeah, right. And so his great grandfather Samuel A. Aykroyd was a dentist, but he was also, more important than that, he was an ardent spiritualist, and he even corresponded with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
That's right.
Did he do improv too?
That I don't know. Just a few years ago, Dan's father, Peter Aykroyd Sr., wrote a book about this family history called History of Ghosts. And it covers the family business of spiritualism. And it also covers the history of psychical research, trance, and physical and direct voice mediumship across the world, as well as automatic writing, spirit photography, faith healing, electronic voice phenomena, etc. It really covers the gamut. So if you're looking for some type of primer that gives you a good basis for understanding where paranormal research is today, you'll want to read that book, A History of Ghosts.
And I remember listening to Coast to Coast, and Dan Aykroyd and Peter Aykroyd were both on it. And, you listen to an interview with Dan Aykroyd, and whenever he gets in interview mode, he just sounds like Elwood Blues. Like, he really sounds like Elwood every time he talks. He's like, I love spiritualism. That's just the way he talks.
I'm on a mission from God.
You're just like, we got a half a pack of cigarettes, 100 miles to go, and you're just thinking Elwood's right there.
That's all you can imagine.
Yeah. And it really is fun to hear Dan Aykroyd talk about this, because as someone that remembers, growing up on the original Saturday Night Live and having it just be one of my favorite things to be able to stay up late on Saturday night and watch that, to have Dan Aykroyd be like, I totally believe in this. It just is the most exciting thing in the world.
Dan Aykroyd, he helped raise us. Let's just put it out there.
Yeah, when mom and dad were just drinking and, out of control, but the TV was the only thing that kept us going.
That's right. He was our moral center. But anyway, I'm quite fond. I just think he's adorable. And he actually has been quoted as saying, I originated Ghostbusters based on reading the material and the real work of J.B. Rhine, William Roll, and the Menominee. Oh man, I knew I'd have problems with this. The Menominee Dream Lab. Stanley Krippner, he was the scientist behind that one. If I didn't say Maimonides right. Whatever. So real scientists who were into this. So I took that from my family history, my family business, and married it with the ghost comedies of the 1930s. Abbott and Costello, Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, and the Bowery Boys. I mean, everyone did ghost movies. I just thought, let's do a comedy ghost movie, but let's base it on real research. So that's what I'm talking about when I say that.
And we talk about J.B. Rhine extensively in the interview with Nancy Zingroni, Dr. Nancy Zingroni, when we talk about the history of parapsychology. So we'll put that in the show notes, too, if you're wondering who J.B. Rhine and William Roll and Dr. Stanley Krippner all are. Yeah,
and so that's that real-life basis for what you see in Ghostbusters. So I think that's what gives it that strong foundation.
And speaking of the script and real-life inspiration, I like you put this in the outline. Transpersonal psychologist Dr. Charles Tart delivered electric shocks to subjects during an ESP test.
Right. So, when you see Peter Venkman in the beginning of the movie administering those electric shocks, even when that
so
kid
great.
is getting the cards right and he says, I'm studying the effects of negative reinforcement. That kind of stuff really happened. And Charles Tart is awesome, by the way. And he's still alive. But yeah.
That's one of my favorite scenes. That was Gwendolyn. That was Charles, Scott Baio's girlfriend from Charles in Charge.
Oh, I did not know that.
That Bill Murray was hitting on. And
you also see, what do you call that card deck again? I don't know if it's Zener or Zener.
Zener deck. We have a song called Zener deck.
That's right.
So you see that in there, and that was developed by J.B. Rhine from Duke University. He's been called the father of modern parapsychology, and he did real life ESP, extrasensory perception, and PK.
And also to talk about the nerd credentials,
experiments.
The sign nerd experiment credentials here. I went on a Duke University tour just because I was interested in the J.B. Rhine Center.
Oh, really?
So, yeah,
you're looking for
the summer before senior
for
year.
colleges.
The summer before senior year, we went to North Carolina for a couple weeks so Dad could do something, and I'm like, we need to tour Duke University because I'm considering applying there, and it was just because of J.B. Rhine. Otherwise, because I don't care about basketball, and you think I want to live in North Carolina? No, but what I would like to do is study at the J.B. Rhine Center for Psychical Research.
Yeah, but that's been closed down at the university, although they do have the Rhine Research Center still in North Carolina.
Right, I discovered that, which is why I didn't send them an application.
You were like, Psh, Duke,
Blue Devils.
I hate you now.
You got nothing.
Right. Like they could have totally got you, like one of the greatest minds in our generation. But no. They closed down the paranormal research.
Right. Instead, I joined a band. Okay.
That's right. So yeah, let me just...
Mwah, mwah.
So William Roll, he was another one. State University of West Georgia. He studied poltergeist phenomena. He's dead now, I believe. Stanley Krypter, he studied telepathy at the Menominee. I don't know if I said that right again. Dream Research Lab. And as we said, Charles Tart. So, these are all real life people. And some of them are still in the field doing research.
And that's part of the fun of the original Ghostbusters, because you feel that love towards those parapsychological experiments. And Dan Aykroyd really does. He's got the family history, and he brings out his personal love for it with things like his brother involved with the OSIR, the Office of Scientific Investigation and Research.
Right. So this is one of Dan's other paranormal projects where in the 90s, it was 96 to 2000, I believe.
And it starred Max Headroom himself, Matt Frewer.
Oh, yeah. Matt Frewer is in there. And so the Sci Factor Chronicles of the Paranormal was supposed to be based on the real life case files of the OSIR. Now, this is really a weird part, and it's in the book too, a history of ghosts. Peter Aykroyd Sr. talks about Peter Jr.'s involvement with the OSIR, but I don't know if I can believe it, to tell you the truth, because it's supposed to be this shadowy quasi-government organization that was started in the 40s, and that now it's gone underground, like for a while.
Canadians don't have anything shadowy.
Well, yeah, I don't know. And this was a Canadian TV show, we should say, Sci Factor, but it was on TNT here in the United States. But anyway, so there's this agency that opened this public relations office and then contacted Peter Aykroyd to help them disseminate the facts of paranormal phenomena that they had gleaned through their almost 60 years of research. So I don't know if I can believe that. I don't want to be Blair Witched into believing something that's not true. But I don't know. I mean, maybe there is this organization. The idea is, it says in History of Ghosts that the public relations office has now been closed, and since about 2000, and they've gone underground again. They're operating under another name somewhere, and they have limitless resources and the highest level of technology. I don't know if I can believe that. I want to go there, Dan, but I'm just not sure. But anyway, so Chronicles, Sci-Factor Chronicles of the Paranormal was an interesting show. It was a lot like the X-Files, which was going on concurrently with it.
Sure. Well, I like to think of it as a lot like Baywatch Nights.
Yeah, I forgot about Baywatch Nights, another classic.
And it's funny, one of my friends actually got to go on the set of Baywatch Nights, and he's got this picture with David Hasselhoff. And
that's cool.
I thought it was the set of Baywatch, and he's like, "No, it was this other show called Baywatch Nights or whatever." I'm like, "I watched Baywatch Nights because it was David Hasselhoff in the X-Files with bikinis."
David Hasselhoff does the X-Files with bikinis. That's great.
Wow.
Right. Can you imagine being at the pitch session for that? So imagine the X-Files, but with me and bikinis. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We got to see if that's still on YouTube.
So we should talk a little bit, though, about everybody's favorite scene in Ghostbusters.
Okay.
And then maybe see what some of the real-life inspiration was for that. So, Wendy, what's your...
Oh, man, you're going to make me go first.
First of all, when did you see Did you see Ghostbusters in the theater? Were you seeing a home video, or...
I don't remember, actually. I think it might have been on video that I saw it the first time. Probably on a VHS rental from, the local...
Right.
What was it, like Star Liquor or something like that? Used
Like
to rent out
had video
VHS
stuff.
cassettes. But I don't know. I mean, I think, okay, to be honest with you, the opening scene in the library with the books flying off the shelves, that just lured me in like nothing else, because it's so, especially as a kid, it was so scary. Like it felt so real, and and then wondering what they're going to discover, what's going to, that just, what a great start for the movie. So,
and I remember a couple years ago, I stayed in New York for a week and was right across the street from the big library, and I ran up the steps every day just to relive that opening scene from Ghostbusters. I really did. Like, we'd go somewhere and I had to go on the subway or whatever, and I would just run up the steps.
It's such an impressive building.
And I took a picture and put it on Facebook. I'm
I
like,
remember that.
How does everybody not think about the Ghostbusters every time they walk past the New York Central Library?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
That was a good one. The New York Public Library. There's so much in that opening that it's just so rich. I mean,
they
you
immediately
can
bring
see,
up ectoplasm, which is something from spiritualism.
Yeah, that's
right. And also the symmetrical stacking of the books, common in poltergeist phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that
wait, tell us about this.
Yeah, well, so when I was watching it originally as a kid, I didn't realize that whole like symmetrical stacking that Ray brings up was a thing.
What do you mean
it was
symmetrical stacking? I'm sorry.
Well, there's just this stack of books in the middle of the bookcases, and then of course Peter.
So it's obviously the poltergeist is OCD.
Right.
Yeah. So
That's what I was thinking too.
that is something that is shown kind of a corollary between OCD and poltergeist. But anyway, and Bill Murray, the joke is, yes, no human would stack books that way, which is kind of, if you blow up that scene and you think about it, real life depictions of ghosts, that or other paranormal phenomena like crop circles, people are always like, no human could do that. So that was like an authentic joke there that Peter Venkman is like, oh yes, it couldn't have been done by humans. That was the joke. But then, as I go through my life doing ghost investigations, not eliminations, but I do investigate ghosts whenever possible.
Yeah.
So I've seen in some of the cases that in various hauntings there'll be things stacked. Like one location where there's been a lot of activity for decades. They had
Wait, what's the location that's had a lot of activity for decades?
Okay, well, it's not open anymore. It's in Mequon, and I'm waiting for it to open again because I had my one and only paranormal experience there. That
What? And Wendy's the hometown Mequon girl.
Yeah,
Right.
That's where I grew up.
Right, it's an old farmhouse that was turned into a bar and restaurant. It's no longer open and has been
What was
closed
the name of the
for-
bar and restaurant? Was it like Bob's?
Well, no,
Wendy
it used
go
to
there
be
party?
called Club Forest. It was a steakhouse, and then it became a Mexican restaurant, and it was called Blue Agave. And that was around 2000.
And when
and-
did you ever experience anything there?
No.
I did. That's
I'm just disappointed that there was a Mexican restaurant in my hometown that I didn't know about. Like, how did that happen?
burritos this whole time.
yeah. So
Sorry.
that's the place where I had dinner, and then I went to the bar, and I was talking to the bartender about the ghost stories, because the bartenders are the ones who traditionally are the keepers of stories. And so I'm trying to figure out if there's any more stories about the place. And as I was talking to him, this tray of glasses that was up on this high flat surface above everyone's head flew off and crashed into the middle of the floor.
Oh, so yes, the flowers are not still standing.
Nope. Was
Wow.
completely smashed in the middle of the floor. But anyway, so this place had just so many stories. And one of the stories was that they went into the basement storage area one morning. And when they opened it up, they saw that all the chairs that had been, neatly stowed away along the walls were actually in the middle of the floor now, in some kind of weird, like unwieldy pyramidal configuration. So, they walk in and all these chairs are stacked on top of each other in this pyramid shape, just like wobbling, but still holding their shape in the air. So, I mean, I would have loved to have seen that.
You know what's funny is that people used to do that as a joke in the dorms.
Oh,
in
yeah?
Madison.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They would stack the chairs all on top of each other.
Maybe
as
it
a
wasn't
joke.
people doing a joke.
So maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't just the
joke
chicks
was
in
on
like
us.
617B. We know who it was. It was a freaky ghost. Yeah,
The
You
joke
better
was
come.
on us because we thought it was people.
Right. And so the ghosts are disappointed because like, finally, I thought they'd pay attention to us.
Yeah, that's
Come
our
on,
best
guys.
bit. And now we got people doing it.
That's the
Right,
best we got.
That's not even fair. So now we're just gonna have to watch them in the shower. Okay.
Uh,
So Allison, what was your favorite scene from Ghostbusters?
Well, I think I don't know. There's just so many of them, but I think the whole bit with Gozer and Zool and that whole like ancient societies.
And how long
part.
did it take you to realize the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper?
Right.
Like, I didn't even
It-
get that until I was 20. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's just the Keymaster and she's the Gatekeeper, and then you put them together. Oh,
You
that's the
had
joke.
no recollection, no realization that there was some sex magic involved in that, huh, Mike?
No, I did not.
I didn't either, actually.
Well, rewatching
Until you
it
just
over the
blew my
years,
mind telling
I've
me
been
that.
surprised by like how adult it really is. Like how adult that movie is, and how popular it was for us kids, and a lot of that stuff just went over our heads, I guess.
Yeah.
But here's something interesting that the big bad in the movie Gozer.
the Gozerian.
Yeah, the Gozer, the
Traveler.
Gozerian. So the name Gozer actually comes from the Enfield Poltergeist case, which you guys were talking about just a few episodes ago.
In the Ed and Lorraine Warren episode, we talk about the Enfield Poltergeist because that's what The Conjuring 2 is based on.
Right, the subject of The Conjuring 2. So it turns out that Dan Aykroyd, in all his reading he's done on the paranormal, had read about the Enfield Poltergeist story and had read that one of the mediums involved in, contacting the possessing spirits had come in contact with a spirit that was calling itself Gozer. And this spirit was using elementals, which are, lower level spirits, to manifest itself. And so this Gozer was supposed to be some kind of black magic user that was in some way involved with the Enfield Poltergeist disturbance.
Whoa.
And so
yeah.
the elementals, when we're talking about it in the movie, would be Vince Clortho, Rick Moranis' character, and the Gatekeeper, Sigourney Weaver's character. Dana. There is no Dana, only Zool. So they would be the elementals who are getting the world ready for Gozer to come in and destroy it.
That's right. So, I mean, that was cool from, when I found out that Gozer, that the inspiration for that name came from a real case, as is many of the things in the movie have their real life corollaries. So that was one of them. And apparently also, I think this image is really neat. Dan has been quoted as saying that the name Gozer was scrawled upon the walls in the house where the Enfield Poltergeist subjects lived.
Creepy.
Yeah.
If you do some research inside the richer Ghostbusters universe that came from the TV show, and we could have an episode dedicated to the cool occult shout-outs that the real Ghostbusters cartoon had.
Right, it's a cartoon for kids, and it had all these real occult underpinnings.
A ton of H.P. Lovecraft stuff.
That's why I loved it so much.
There was an episode. First of all, we use a real Ghostbusters sample in one of our episodes. We had a song called Devil Music. And so we use a real Ghostbusters sample from that for an episode where Satan is actually setting up a game show in New York. But also, the cartoon would have everything from Ragnarok. That was the first time I ever heard of the Nordic mythology of Ragnarok. And the episode was called Ragnarok and Roll. And then they'd have H.P. Lovecraft, and they would go visit Miskatonic University and talk to the professors at Miskatonic University, and they'd fight Cthulhu.
Right, the episode called Collect Call of Cthulhu.
And Call of Cthulhu.
Instead of Call of Cthulhu, which is H.P. Lovecraft's story, Collect Call of Cthulhu. It's awesome.
It really was the first 2 seasons of the real Ghostbusters and the syndicated series that you see every day. And there was like 100 episodes of the syndicated series. But those first 2 seasons and the first season of the syndicated series was spearheaded by J. Michael Straczynski from Babylon 5. So you have a real science fiction writer coming in to bring the Ghostbusters to kids. And that made it really fun.
And I love that it wasn't dumbed down. It's so great when you can have a cartoon introducing all this weirdness to kids. I mean, certainly there's people who will not like that, but I like it because if you introduce these concepts to kids, and then they can have all this other literature to go to and actually read. And reading should always be just a little bit dangerous.
Well, yes, reading should be dangerous. But I think what I liked about it was that you take all these supernatural entities from the spirit of Halloween, Samhain,
Oh, right.
And the boogeyman. And the Ghostbusters fought the boogeyman. So if you're a little kid afraid of the boogeyman, you're like, well, no, it's all right. The Ghostbusters took care of him. And so, you take these characters and these evil characters from all kinds of fiction, werewolves, vampires, and then they'd be taken care of by these 4 regular dudes. I mean, I guess they were doctors, so they weren't just regular dudes. But they took all of them, and then they would fight them. And so that was a really fun thing for kids. And until they really dumbed down the series in the 3rd season and added this, made Slimer the main character. And I love Slimer, but they made him the main character. They dumbed down the series. J. Michael Straczynski left because he wouldn't accept the changes because he thought it was too dumb. And they also disempowered Janine. And we love Janine because she's fun and she's part of the team, and she even suits up in a couple episodes. And they wanted to make her less of a powerful female character and more of a mommy type character.
Oh, there goes that misogyny again.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's one of the reasons J. Michael Straczynski left.
Well, I respect his creative decisions.
Yeah, because he wasn't just making a kids show; he was making work that he wanted to be really proud of.
Right,
and so he's like, "Screw it, I'm out."
Yeah, you can really feel that when you watch Collect Call of Cthulhu, and it's just a masterful work that they're going to introduce these advanced concepts to kids, and then you can go and do further reading. I just thought that was such a thrill, even watching that as an older kid. But yeah, for me, the whole out of this world aspect of Ghostbusters, and this idea that we have these ancient gods that like in the movie, Ivo Shandor is, has this strange cult that makes Dana Barrett's building. They engineered it to, bring in spirit energy.
That's my favorite scene from the movie, too. So, number one, I have a hard time with conflict between good guy characters. So when the Ghostbusters are in jail and everything, I'm like, oh, I didn't like it. I'm a little kid. When I watched Three's Company, whenever Jack would say something totally stupid and he'd ruin the whole thing, I'd have to close my eyes for like 30 seconds. And watching The Office, while I did think was funny, was a chore for me.
Oh, Mike.
So
Such
I
a
had
peaceful
that
guy.
Well, but he had that conflict between the good guys. Like, obviously, the city of New York's the good guys because you think of the NYPD and the fire department and the mayor. And he puts the Ghostbusters in jail, and they all get together and they start talking about how Ivo Shandor created the building. And how after World War I, he thought humanity was too sick to survive. So he had to bring on Gozer to the destruction of humanity and created a cult for that. That, when we talk about the rich history of that universe, that established for me as not even 8-year-old, a 7-year-old watching the film, that this was going to be... this had more stakes than that. You go back to World War I, and so when we were talking about the secret societies, that was my favorite scene in the movie, when they lay out the blueprint of the building in Central Park West, and they talk about how we're going to get to the top and how we're going to get to the Temple of Gozer. And I still, whenever I have to go up too many flights of stairs, I still quote Bill Murray when he says, "Tell me when we get to the 100th floor, because I'm going to puke."
Yeah, so, that was great too, because like that whole idea of these weird sects that are summoning these ancient gods to destroy humanity was so H.P. Lovecraft.
Well, it wasn't just H.P. Lovecraft, it's also one of our favorite fiction authors too, L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh, right. Yes. Well, that whole thing with the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper, that totally reminded me.
I've heard Tom Cruise talk about that, I think.
No way, really?
No, I haven't. Heard about it. I'm just making a Scientology joke. It's okay.
Oh, poor Tom Cruise.
I know you love Tom Cruise, Allison. So.
Well, I wouldn't say love, but yeah, he's got some good points. Anyway, so back onto Babylon working. So anyway, L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology and science fiction writer, he and Jack Parsons, who was a rocket scientist,
right, the JPL in Huntsville, Alabama.
Right. So he's the founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Still a very important company today.
Yeah, I'd say.
So those two get together.
Space again.
They're followers of Aleister Crowley. Holy moly, it's Aleister Crowley, right?
Whoa.
So
He's our man.
and the
He's
OTO, who you guys have talked about that before, right?
Yes.
So
we've talked about Uncle Alistair.
Yes, Uncle Al. So this whole idea of real life magic, they were really into it. Jack Parsons especially, and he wanted to do this sex magic called Babylon working. So the idea was he would find this elemental woman, and
like where? Like at the bar, or where do you?
I don't know. I don't know exactly where he met her. I think it was in his own home because he used to have these crazy parties. But anyway, The idea was he was looking for his gatekeeper to bring this supernatural being of ultimate power into the world. And this is a real thing. It was called Babylon working. And it never accomplished what they wanted it to, but it was based on Aleister Crowley's novel Moonchild from 1917. So that's totally like the whole Keymaster Gatekeeper thing was Babylon working realized.
Oh, and that's great. And we'll have to have a whole episode on Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard and the kind of weird stuff they did. Like that might have to be our first like TV MA episode when we talk about the kind of stuff that they did
right
back in the 40s and 50s. Like,
yeah, they were wild. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Jack Parsons was going to the moon every night.
But yeah, I mean, just that idea, like when you first see it in the theater, you're like, wow, this is really out there. Where did like the ancient Sumerians come into it? Apparently this was a Harold Ramis edition, this idea of ancient societies bringing back a god.
Later on in the mythology, they would say that Gozer was the brother of Tiamat.
Right, which is a real Babylonian, I think Babylonian god, or I don't know. I get them mixed up.
And
all those ancient societies.
We just at the, I believe that Our Lady Rosemary Ellen Guiley discussed Tiamat when she was discussing the jinn and the reptilians.
Right.
The thing is that Tiamat was a reptile god that was worshipped in ancient times, and Tiamat's children were said to be half man, half reptile. And so
neat.
when they developed the Ghostbusters mythology for the video game in 1990, the Ghostbusters video game, they made Gozer the brother of Tiamat, and the worshippers of Gozer had a war with the worshippers of Tiamat. So does that mean that Gozer was up against the jinn?
The jinn, they're everywhere.
The jinn are everywhere, even in Ghostbusters.
That's right.
They're coming for your cheese.
Well, the other thing that Ghostbusters had was a lot of occult texts. And I mean, that was really interesting to me, that there could be these dangerous books.
Well, right. So, like, the Tobin's Spirit Guide was the big one they talk about. And they talk about this in the TV show all the time. Tobin's Spirit Guide, they'd look up a ghost in Tobin's Spirit Guide. So, like, when Egon called Slimer a Class 5 free-roaming vapor, on the 6th floor, Class 5 free-roaming vapor, that was that Tobin had created these classes and had a spirit guide to a encyclopedia of the supernatural.
Right, and it reminds me of, medieval bestiaries, their whole idea that, you got to have this dictionary of creatures.
We do have a couple examples of that, like the Malleus Maleficarum from 1486.
Right, known as the Hammer of the Witches. And that was a way that you could diagnose witchcraft. So, but there are also like all these grimoires, these magical texts as well. We'll have to put a link in the show notes of, some places where you can get a look at these real life dangerous books. And, apparently the Tobin Spirit Guide, Spade's Catalog of Nameless Horrors, and the Roland's Guide of Secret Societies and Sex, they're not real text. I mean, but they might have... there might be similar texts that are a lot like them.
Well, they did for this new movie. They did make a Tobin Spirit Guide.
Right. I saw that there were a couple of versions of Tobin's Spirit Guide, and so maybe some of those. One of them anyway was illustrated with different entities. Yep. So that one might be interesting to check out.
So we'll have all those links in the show notes, and they'll be at othersidepodcast.com/100.
100.
And speaking of, we're reaching the end of the podcast, and we can talk about Ghostbusters, and I think we should all go see the movie next week.
Yeah, definitely.
And I was so jealous. I'm gonna post some pictures because our friend Alex Wendy, he was at the premiere last night.
Wow,
awesome.
Taking pictures. So he's got a bunch of pictures from the obviously the Chinese theater on Hollywood Boulevard.
That's great.
And so I took some of his Instagrams and we'll post them in the thing. But episode 100, the end of the first Ghostbusters movie, what's the last line? Winston looks around at all the people supporting them after their fight with Gozer, the Gozerian. And he says, I love this town. And this week, othersidepodcast.com/donate, our first patron through Patreon is also from New York.
Woohoo!
Terrific.
We'd like to thank John for
thank you, John,
being the first patron of the See You on the Other Side podcast. And you guys can join into at othersidepodcast.com/donate.
Right. What I'm really excited about is now that we have our first patron, it means we get to start having our regular Google Hangouts.
Google, I'm excited about the Google Hangouts because I want to get feedback from people about the things that they think are cool and fun.
Yes, and that's one of the rewards for the Patreon campaign that we have is, I think, at the $3 level. You get to join the Google Hangouts with us. And it's basically a little online party.
And if it's going to be anything like our last Google Hangouts, it'll be a lot of music and interesting conversation and red wine.
Yeah. Right. Or tea or whatever.
Whatever you like. So, thank you for joining us today, Allison. It's always a treat to have you on.
Thanks, Allison.
It was my pleasure. I'm just so excited about the new movie, and I'm excited about you guys and episode 100 and your new Patreon. I mean, it's all happening now. It's all happening.
And congratulations to you, too, because we're all in this together. So,
Absolutely.
Listeners, thank you. Co-hosts, thank you.
You're welcome.
Weird topics, thank you.
Episode 100, and let's get to that new song. One of the best parts of the original movie is the ridiculous commercial that they make when they're trying to drum up some business for the Ghostbusters. And the tagline for that commercial is, "We're ready to believe you." And we thought that would be the perfect title for a song dedicated and inspired by the greatest paranormal investigation film of all time, Ghostbusters. Here's Sunspot with "Ready to Believe You."
Terrors, and they came every night. I lied awake, so terrified, never daring to close my eyes. I thought that I would be up there when for the rest of my days, until I saw a flick that said I didn't have to be afraid. I didn't have to be afraid. I was hoping for a sequel, but I guess I'll just have to take a reboot. And I don't care that it's all women, if you do, you're just a tool. Can't believe it's 016, and that this stuff is finally cool. I'm gonna meet a girl who says that there's no data, only Zoom. There is no data, only Zoom. She's the woman, you're destructor. Would you rather be a cynic or a fool? Choose the form of your destructor, baby. 'Cause if you don't, they will choose for you. And the man said, who you gonna call? You know who, you know who. And the man said, who you gonna call? We're ready to believe you. From Samhain to the boogeyman, they fought nightmares across this land. From devil dogs to demigods, they never worry about the odds. Got no time for the EPA or the silly bureaucrats. They hate that. They hate that. Slime was funny when it started, but that classified free rumor just got a quick. So did the Junior Busters. Hey, who wants to see a bunch of kids? Gozer was a traveler, and he traveled his butt right into a beat down. And then they showed that prehistoric beat, how we do things downtown. How we do things downtown. Choose the form of your destructor. Would you rather be a cynic or a fool? Choose the form of your destructor.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
Busted makes me feel good.